The earliest records of the wire weaver come from the nightmare city of Atropolis, with drow machinists spinning threads of spider silk into the ultimate spelunking equipment. Eventually, the technology moved west to the city of Clothopolis, helping architects sculpt buildings stretching just out of the reach of the heavens. Whether they were being used to swing in the sun or to catapult through the darkness, these kinetic cables became extensions of the people who used them. Grappling hooks are the coolest thing in all of existence. From the VMEs of Attack on Titan to the claw shots of Twilight Princess, there's no faster way to establish a character as a badass than to have them swing around a concrete jungle like a concrete Tarzan. Of course, the real king of swing that inspired me to make this subclass is none other than Nathan Spencer from Bionic Commando.
Hello, my dear.
Spider-Man. Let's go with Spider-Man.
It's Spider-Man!
But before we get subclassy, first we need to get classy, talking about the Artificer, from which the Wire Weaver will spin its wicked web. Artificer is the newest class in the game, and it's also the most complicated, and due to power creep, one of the most busted. Artificer is a half-casting class, similar to Ranger or Paladin, but unlike Ranger or Paladin, extra attack isn't guaranteed. There are some more spell-focused Artificers, like Alchemist or Artillerist, that are going to turn cantrips and 5th level spells into something that feels as powerful as a 9th level spell. But of course, those subclasses don't matter to us, because we're making our own subclass. Thankfully, there is a 3rd level of customization with Artificer, the Infusions. It mentions they can do simple things like buff your AC or boost your stats, sometimes breaking the standard limits even. They're pretty good. Then you've got the Artificer's spell list, which pushes utility to the ultimate level by basically refusing to give you anything that deals damage that isn't a cantrip. Don't worry though, what you lack in damage you make up for with some of the best creative problem-solving spells in the game. So since the big weakness of the Artificer spell list is a lack of damage, obviously we're going to want damage from our homebrew spell list. Right?
Nope!
Since the original Wire Weavers were Underdark Scouts, most of their spells are focused on immobilizing enemies to make sure that they can make a clean getaway. For your first level spells, Entangle is from the Druid list, and now I guess on the Ranger list, thanks to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, that creates an area of difficult terrain that grapples and restrains creatures inside, holding them still so you can get away, or holding them still so you can hit them harder. Earth Tremor messes up a section of the ground, making it difficult terrain, and dealing a little bit of damage right away, in case you want to pull the floor up underneath someone and hit them with the rubble that follows. For 2nd level spells, Hold Person is obviously a little busted, since it does the same thing that the 5th level spell Hold Monster does, except with a humanoid restriction, so it doesn't work on dragons, constructs, or guinea pigs. Don't use Hold Monster on a guinea pig. Maximilian's Earthen Grasp is similar to Entangle, but it only works on one creature and also deals a bit of damage as you make a hand that squeezes people to aggravate my claustrophobia. I mean, their claustrophobia. For 3rd level spells, Slow is a huge area debuff that ruins an enemy's AC. It also ruins their movement speed. It cuts down on the amount of things they can do, including spells, making casting spells harder. Spells tend to be pretty good. Erupting Earth is like a bigger version of Earth Tremor that deals more damage, so hopefully you won't be on the ground to deal with that. You won't be on the ground to deal with that. You should not touch the ground with this subclass. 4th level Wire Weavers get Grasping Vine to yoink people 20 feet as a bonus action on your turn, and Staggering Smite to hit people so hard they're worse at fighting you. For 5th level spells, Hold Monster is like Hold Person, but without the humanoid restriction, so you can use it on dragons, constructs, and gerbils. Don't use it on a gerbil. Steel Wind Strike is the other option, blasting through an area and dealing a ton of damage to a ton of enemies with a lot of nothing personnel kit energy. A few of these are going to help you deal damage, but the real goal is to set up your team for great combo attacks. This really kicks off at the 3rd level of Artificer because that's where you can choose your specialty. Like the other specialists, Wire Weavers get a set of tools for free. I chose Weaver's Supplies because that works the best with the name. I actually felt bad about calling it Wire Weaver since it gets the Weaver's tools, but then I remembered Alchemist. Guess what tool proficiencies Alchemists get? Now you can use those Weaver's tools as a spellcasting focus since you're an Artificer, but you can also use them to make Kinetic Cables, the main draw of the Wire Weaver class. Battlesmiths get their Steel Defender, Artillerists get their Turret, Alchemists get Sauce, and you get
Grappling Hook!
The original Wire Weavers were the Drow Elves of Atropolis. They used a mixture of arcane spider silk and Hizakur to rappel deep into the depths of the Underdark, searching for the portal to hell that let loose the demons on their beloved city. Only the finest scholars with the nimblest of fingers could craft the kinetic cables, with no shortage of help from the spider goddess Fate. Crafting kinetic cables took around an hour. It was usually recommended to do so as part of a short rest. The cable's strength and length were both determined by the craftsmanship, which is why they stretch an amount of feet equal to 5 times your intelligence modifier. You gain a climbing speed equal to the cable's length as long as you have them equipped. Since they are able to fire so rapidly, you can even move that amount as a bonus action on your turns.
Grappling Hook!
Moving so quickly would catch the demons off guard, giving them disadvantage on their opportunity attacks against the drow who moved in such a way. Of course, the cables wouldn't be able to do any of these things if they were unable to support the weight of a humanoid, so they can support your weight and the weight of any gear you carry. You can also hang from ceilings and walls while you're using them.
Grappling Hook!
An amount of distance equal to the length of the cable. Sometimes, unfortunately, a scouting mission goes wrong, and you are unable to escape from the demons who are chasing you. So it is good to know that the kinetic cables can also be formidable weapons to keep demons at a distance, dealing 1d4 plus your intelligence modifier in bludgeoning damage. Turns out that crafting the cables is the hardest part. Actually using them in combat is fairly simple. So they're simple melee weapons, but with the range equal to 5 times your intelligence modifier.
Mabel, no offense, but that grappling hook has literally never helped us once.
Level 5 ability is a little more simple. It's an extra attack. You can make 2 attacks with your action instead of 1 using your kinetic cables or any other weapon you have. You can make 1 attack with your kinetic cables and 1 with a repeating shot using one of your artificer infusions if you want to be some sort of sniper spider person. The demons combing the streets of Atropolis were formidable, but the drow did find that hitting them twice was much more effective than hitting them once. That extra attack gets beefed up a little bit at the 9th level with enchanted extensions. After you use your action to make an attack with the kinetic cables, you're able to cast a cantrip out of the end of the kinetic cables. A taser cable with shocking grasp, a firebolt cable with firebolt. The wire weavers who swing in the sun of Clothopolis often added their own signature to the end of their attacks.
Get over here!
The drow had no need for such reverie, instead choosing to immobilize their foes using a special grapple check from the end of the kinetic cable after their first attack action. Since the strength of the grapple was based off the strength of the cable, it used their intelligence modifiers instead of their strength scores. Once a wire weaver reached the 15th level of Artificer, the kinetic cables were an extension of themselves. As a reaction when someone would try to attack them or force them to make a saving throw, they were able to move a distance equal to the length of the kinetic cable. If the attack was no longer in range, it would outright miss, and even if it was still in range, it would be made with disadvantage. Now these reflexes were limited to an amount of times per day equal to their intelligence modifier, but that was enough for them to get out of dodge and thankfully record some of their experiences for a Barbrarian to later study. So how well did Wire Weaver mix with the artificers we know today? Well, Enhanced Weapon would be great for the kinetic cables, Enhanced Arcane Focus would help the cantrips that come out of them at higher levels. You could use things like a Cloak of Elvenkind or Boots of Elvenkind to add some sneakiness to the high mobility. You could also use Winged Boots or Boots of Striding and Springing to add to your mobility even further. Belt of Hill Giant Strength gives you 21 strength. That's just good. There's also a lot of spells that could help you whether you're swinging through spooky caverns or sunlit skyscrapers. Featherfall stops people from taking falling damage, including you. Cure Wounds, Lesser Restoration, and Revivify would make you a very speedy medic. Snare, Grease, and Bigby's Hand would add to your immobilization techniques, as well as Web, probably the most Wire Weaver spell that I didn't have to add to the Wire Weaver spell list because it's already on the Artificer spell list. Finally, Haste and Freedom of Movement will make sure that you're not losing out on any mobility you gained from the kinetic cables. But what if you didn't want to keep going in Artificer? What if you just wanted to aggravate my lactose intolerance with some serious multi-class cheese? I think the most obvious way to do this is by exploiting the simple melee weapon portion of the Wire Weaver's kinetic cables, by dipping to Monk and making them monk weapons. With 3 levels of Wire Weaver and 17 levels of Monk, you would have a monk weapon with 25 feet of range that deals 1d10 damage. You could even make yourself a Kensei monk and get a bonus to your AC after making them a Kensei weapon. Not to mention the additional mobility you would get from the Kinetic Cables, helping you cut down on spending key points on things like Step of the Wind. Barbrarian could also be a fun way to use the simple melee weapon property, since as it is a simple melee weapon, you can use your strength modifier for the Kinetic Cables and get your rage bonus from them as well, so you can fight from a distance as a barbarian, though that's more just kind of funny and less good. Eldritch Knight is probably the most powerful option for multiclassing with Wireweaver, since their 7th level ability lets you make an attack as a bonus action after you cast a cantrip with your action. Since the Wireweaver can cast a cantrip as part of their attack action after they get extra attack, that would still let you do 3 attacks per round and a cantrip. You'd have to hit level 20, so I don't feel too bad about how busted that is. Overall, it's kind of hard to determine if an Artificer class is busted or not busted because Artificer is kind of busted. Artillerists can make a naked gun monkey man with 31 base AC who never dies. So, I don't really know if this is better than that. Really, the only way to figure out if this is busted, useful, fun, all that kind of stuff is just to play it. So why don't you join my Patreon? That's right, this whole video was an elaborate Patreon plug, as is this whole series. At the $5 tier on my Patreon, you will get access to the print version of these subclasses as they come out, as well as character sheets for every episode of Building Character. That should help you set up an easy one-shot with your friends if you want to try being a Spider-Man Artificer in Dungeons & Dragons while they do, other normie stuff. You can even go to the Discord after you're done playing and talk about it with other people in my Discord. Heck, you can even vote for which subclass you want to see next at the $1 tier with all the other polls of the Building Character characters. The next video I'm planning on doing is either on the way of the Gelatinous Disciple Monk. These are martial artists who learned their fighting techniques from the oozes. Or you could vote for the College of Fate Bard, artists whose songs challenge the idea of predetermination. I hope that you support me on the Patreon. If not, I hope you enjoyed this video. Anyway, I'll be trying to make as many of these videos as possible. They'll be coming out on Sundays, same time, same place. Subscribe for more.